Israel military operations surge in Lebanon and Gaza. Hamas claims major ambush on IDF. Israel to vote on retaliation against Iran. West Asia conflict set to escalate. Israel at war.
Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast that comes to you from Haifa in northern Israel. I'm Gaurav Sawant. This special broadcast comes to you at a time when Israel has intensified its operations against the Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. There are multiple tunnels of the Hezbollah that have been destroyed by the Israeli Defense Forces. Now, overall, if you look at Israel, it's a multi-pronged offensive where they're tackling with the Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in the south, multiple locations including in and around Khan Yunis targeted by the Israeli Defense Forces in the Gaza Strip in an effort to take out the top leadership of the Hamas. In midst of all of that, there's also the adversary or the enemy within. There's a big story that we're getting to you on this special broadcast where the chief international spokesperson of the Israel police has spoken of how Iran is trying to subvert elements within this country, individuals in this country, to try and target the country from within. I'll get you much more on this big story. But first, let's focus on what's happening in northern Israel. While a major part of this area has now been completely cordoned off and it's now only a designated military zone, the Israeli Defense Forces are moving in deeper inside southern Lebanon. They've earmarked an area and they're moving forward inch by inch as they intensify their operations. The effort is to take down a maze of Hezbollah tunnels that were used to target Israel, especially northern Israel. In just a moment from now, I'll get you images of the IDF spokesperson, Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari. He actually went into one of these tunnels after the Hezbollah had been decimated in this area and pushed back even further. That's the strategy that the IDF is adopting to push back the Hezbollah as much as they can and create a buffer zone all the way to the Litani River, a task that's easier said than done. Listen in to Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari, the spokesperson of the IDF, as he takes you through a maze of these Hezbollah tunnels now being destroyed by the IDF.
We're now in a Lebanese village, a Shia village in Lebanon. This village is one of the villages close to the Israeli border. I want to show you a Lebanese house, a Lebanese in a Shia village house close to our border. Every house is a terror base. I wanted you to see in your own eyes what we found here today. This is our forces raiding on this village. Come with me. In this house, a storage of gear, waiting for Hezbollah's Radwan forces, with vests, helmets, night vision, mines you can see here. Already, all of these weapons here were stored and piled in the house, ready for the big raid. The raid plan called Conquer the Galilee. They plan to do a massacre in a larger scale than the 7th of October on northern Israel. And with this gear over here, I want you to see what kind of a gear. You see the hand grenades here. Sniper rifles, extremely high sniper rifles, shooting on our forces, shooting on our civilians from far away. Look at those sniper rifles here. All was ready for the raid. Explosive RPGs here. This is one of the PK fired by the terrorists of Hezbollah on our forces raiding on this house. This is a terror base. This is a Lebanese village, a Shia village built by Hezbollah. Every house has gear ready for the raid against Israel, conquer the Galilee Plain. We are now going a house through house, raiding each and every house, taking all this gear, dismantling Hezbollah's capability to do the Conquer Galilee plan. This is what we do. This is a limited, targeted raid on the northern part of Israel, okay, that we are conducting across the border to take care with the threat that Hezbollah has built for years. This is supposed to be clean here. 1701 prevents those arms here. And we are making sure, imposing this area to be clean so we can tell our citizens from across the border that have been suffering for nearly a year now. They've been suffering many UAVs, rockets, missiles. We can tell them, you can come home safely and secure. Go back to your homes. We have cleaned the threat of Hezbollah next to your border.
Israel's operations in the Lebanon area, especially in the southern Lebanon area in 2024, is extremely different from the operations that were undertaken in 2006, which led to what Admiral Hagari was referring to is the 1701 UN resolution that actually said for Israeli forces to move back into Israel, the Hezbollah will have to go north of the Litani River, which it never did. But this time, the Israeli forces say they will ensure the Hezbollah weakened, or at least has had a major setback, considering not just Hassan Nasrallah and Fuad Shukr and Hussein Sururi, but the entire top leadership of the organization has been decimated. The second rung and the tactical leadership has been taken down simultaneously. So as operations against the Hezbollah continue in the north, simultaneously operations against the Hamas are also being intensified in the south. But in midst of this, there is tremendous criticism that hospitals are in the line of fire. Civilian areas are being targeted. The Palestinian authorities say that they've lost close to 40,000 people, 41,000 people, and 97,000 have been injured. Many displaced, children amongst the worst sufferers. But as tensions in West Asia increase, we bring you this ground report. The conflict in West Asia escalates as Israel engages in a multi-front war. In northern Israel, military vehicles are on the move as the nation intensifies its assault on the Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. The Israeli government claims these operations are essential to ensure the safe return of tens of thousands of Israelis who evacuated northern areas due to cross-border rocket fire. Israeli army footage released Thursday shows strikes on Hezbollah weapon storage facilities. On September the 30th, Israel launched a ground operation into Lebanon after nearly a year of intermittent cross-border fire. Meanwhile, in Gaza, the situation remains critical. The death toll from an Israeli airstrike on a school shelter in Deir al-Balah rose to 28.
شايفين الدم شايفين الشهداء.
The man I lifted from over his face, he was all ripped. He had no head. I did not know who he was. There was a woman nearby. Here you can see her blood. She was on the floor. I lifted the cloth from her face. I found her dead. May God have mercy on her.
الناس اللي إنها أبرياء مدنيين يا عم إحنا ملناش إحنا في مدرسة قاعدين.
As the airstrikes continue in both directions, Palestinians search through the debris in Gaza City, looking for survivors, following attacks on clinics housing displaced individuals.
Children were playing in the schoolyard. They opened a school for them upstairs to tutor them just 2 days ago. All of this missile drops on them and rips young children. I come and find the mother lying on the floor. I lift her face to see who she is. May God have mercy on you. Hamas terrorists are claiming a significant ambush on Israeli forces, targeting armored vehicles and soldiers in northern Gaza. The Qassam brigades claim they have successfully struck Israeli troops during their latest ground invasion. And 10 days after Iran's missile offensive,
Israel's security cabinet is set to vote on authorizing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant to determine their response. In this multi-front war, the greatest cost remains the loss of civilian lives. As the conflict unfolds, the death toll rises, leaving a devastating impact on countless families. With Gaurav Sawant in northern Israel and Ashutosh Mishra in southern Lebanon, Bureau Report, India Today.
So when you look at the ground situation, Israel is not just fighting on two fronts, the Hezbollah in the north, Hamas in the south, but there's also tackling the threat within. I had the exclusive conversation with Israel police that's actually investigating. It's 1 year of the investigations into the Hamas terror attack on the 7th of October 2023. I spoke to Dean Elsden of the Israel police, who said Hamas terrorists, more than 3,000 of them had attacked Israel, and their aim was not just to remain restricted in the southern part of the country, but to come all the way to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and cause much larger damage than they did in terms of killing 1,200 people and abducting 250. But there's another aspect. Iran, according to the Israel police investigations, is trying to subvert elements within Israel to target the country from within. And that remains a major threat. Whether it's in terms of providing information, including GPS coordinates of military locations, sensitive areas, vital assets and vital points to Iran. And remember, missile strikes were eerily close to the Nevatim airbase and multiple other locations, including the Mossad headquarters in Tel Aviv. But also in terms of providing intelligence, and in some instances, there have been at least 3 since that missile attack, 3 instances in the past 10 days of people within this country targeting people of this country. That's perhaps one of the biggest threats, whether it's something that happened in Beersheba or in Jaffa, or very recently, not very far from where I am, in Haifa, when Israeli Arabs are alleged to have targeted residents and citizens of this country. I get you this India Today exclusive. On the 7th of October, when the first Hamas terrorists came, and I'll in a moment ask him about the numbers who came in, you had police personnel with their pistols and their revolvers taking on terrorists who came with RPGs. So it was pistols, maybe 1 clip or 2 clips versus RPGs. How many terrorists came in? What kind of weapons did they have? 1 year down the line, what kind of evidence have you been able to gather?
So we knew that it was an extensive arsenal on that very first day, but nobody would have imagined the level of weaponry that the terrorists infiltrated Israel with. We're talking about over 3,000 terrorists. We're talking about pickup trucks that had heavy machine guns mounted onto the back of the pickup truck. We're talking about RPGs and snipers and claymore mines and explosives. We're talking about not just the attack itself, where the police officers were battling the terrorists and they were using this weaponry, but even afterwards, where they desecrated the bodies and they would put booby traps of explosives underneath the body, so when the first responders would come, maybe they didn't kill somebody all the way, they left them a little bit of alive, or they left them in plain sight so the first responders could see, they would come, take the body, and it would take the life of the first responder with them. We saw that also in the Shula Identification Center, where the Israel police was identifying the civilians coming in the truckloads. And the police officers would go, they would try to identify this victim, they would find a grenade inside of the body. We're talking about things that the normal human mind can't comprehend. That's what took place on October 7th. We're still hearing more stories. These are things that people, even till this day, can't speak of themselves, the people that went through it, because of the trauma, because of the level of disgust. It's not even mentioning the sexual assault that was taking place, where we have witnesses who said they saw it, they were watching it. These are all things that are now being gathered by the Israel police as part of the investigation. And while the IDF is working very hard inside of Gaza to make sure that we dismantle the Hamas infrastructure, to make sure that we can bring our hostages home who are being held captive by these brutal terrorists, the Israel police is going to continue doing everything possible for the national mission, to bring these terrorists to justice, to bring our loved ones home, and to restore order in the north and bring our loved ones back to their houses.
So are you telling me 3,000 Hamas terrorists they infiltrated?
More than 3,000 terrorists.
More than 3,000.
More than 3,000 terrorists. And it sounds so it sounds like just a number, like, and I'm saying it is 3,000. Can you imagine what 3,000 terrorists means with heavy armed machine guns, with RPGs, with all these different types of weapons going through communities? It's not a battle of an army versus an army. This is a terrorist that was going and looking for civilians to target. And luckily we had brave men and women, Israel police, IDF, security forces from all over coming and rushing to interdict this threat. That represents the Israeli nation. And when I say Israeli nation, it doesn't mean Jews. It doesn't mean just Israelis. There were multiple people that were kidnapped from multiple different nations. We're talking about the Hamas terrorists murdering Muslims, murdering Christians, murdering anybody who they saw. And that's what took place on October 7th. That's what the world really needs to realize and see, that this is not Jews versus Palestinians or Israel versus Palestine or Gaza. This is Israel and a nation, good versus evil, Israel versus terrorist infrastructure. Because today it happened here, we're already starting to see it in different countries abroad.
You had 3,000 plus terrorists who massacred 1,200. God forbid, had the police not been there, what would have happened had those first responders not been there?
At 7 o'clock, earlier than 7 o'clock, even a few minutes before 7, the Israel Southern District Commander gave a call over the radio called Palash Paleshet. This is a call that all of our officers know that shut down the district. We go to man different checkpoints and we stand ready. And that's what our police officers did that day before 7 a.m. Had the Israel police not done that, the terrorists would have made their way to Tel Aviv. They would have made their way to Jerusalem. They would have swarmed the entire country.
And that was the aim?
That was their goal, of course, to terrorize, to murder as many as possible. But I didn't say that the Israel police were a bulletproof vest of our nation for no reason. It was because of them that these terrorists didn't kill thousands, tens of thousands, and gone until who knows how long.
So these terrorists had planned with their pickup trucks, with their machine guns, with their replenishments to come all the way to Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and not just stop in Sderot and Ashkelon and Kfar Aza and Oz, Nehal Oz.
Throughout, their goal was to go throughout the country, to wreak as much havoc as possible. It didn't matter if they were going to die doing it. That's the difference. They grow up on this extreme ideology, this propaganda, this radicalism. This is a threat that we're seeing all across the world. Millions of dollars from abroad have been seized that are part of a terror infrastructure Hamas using to fund their terrorism and their terrorist activities, and it's something that we're continuously doing. Not just the cryptocurrency, we're also targeting Iran, the head of this octopus of proxy of terror, the axis of evil. They're trying to reach Israelis inside of Israel and trying to manipulate them into committing attacks, into assisting them with information to harm our security. The Israel police is also arresting those people who are involved, whether knowingly or not knowingly. We have an eye on these, and we're doing everything possible, things that the public don't even know, to defend our civilians.
Is that Iran trying subversion within your country one of the major threats that Israel police is tackling right now?
The Israel police is tackling threats on many fronts. We're talking about the front of terror. In terror, you have attacks from Lone Wolf, attacks from different terror organizations, attacks from undocumented workers that are coming into Israel. We have to secure our borders, and that's exactly what we're doing. Attacks from different nations, whether it's from Lebanon or, like I said, Iran, who's trying to manipulate people who live in here, like places like Beit Shemesh. We have an eye on all of this. We're going to keep defending our people. October 7th, our nation took a hit, there's no doubt. I'm not going to give criticism under fluorescent lighting, but I'm also not going to lie and say, that it wasn't a huge hit to us. We had civilians who died, our friends, our families. But since October 7th, we've wiped the dust off. We're strong. We're a resilient nation. That's the nation of Israel. For generations, people have tried to persecute us, to kill us, and we stood strong. And we thank India. We thank the United States. We thank all the nations who know that this is not a political war. This is not a war of religion. This is a war of good versus evil. And standing with Israel is standing with humanity.
And as Israel intensifies its operations in southern Lebanon, the situation all across, including in Beirut, is extremely precarious. India Today's Ashutosh Mishra on Ground Zero with this exclusive report.
और मैं आपको जिन इलाके में ले जा रहा हूं, दरअसल अब ये घर का दूसरा हिस्सा है और आप इससे यहाँ से अंदाज़ा लगा सकते हैं कि ब्लास्ट के बाद इसका इम्पैक्ट क्या था। जब मिसाइल ने इस पर हमला किया, पूरा घर तो तबाह हुआ और साथ ही इसके आसपास जो रहने वाले लोग थे उन पर भी उसका असर पड़ा और पूरा इलाका जो आप देख रहे हैं वो मलबे में तब्दील हुआ। ज़्यादातर लोग यहाँ से घर छोड़कर अब सुरक्षित इलाकों की ओर भागकर जा चुके हैं।
Both Ashutosh Mishra and I will continue to report from ground zero as the situation all along West Asia continues to escalate. A quick break. News and updates continue on India Today. Stay with us.
Motorola Razr 50 Ultra comes with Google Gemini.
Rangila Re with Motorola's incredible range of smartphones.
Hello, Moto.
Results day humiliation for our rivals. India Today smashes viewership charts. Unfake, unfuzzy, unfixed viewership. Zero landing equals viewership domination. Others bark, our viewership has bite. India's true #1 channel.
Ratan Tata's demise feels like a personal loss to all of us. And he will be remembered not just for the business empire he built, but leaving behind a legacy of philanthropy. Key among other initiatives was Ratan Tata's love for animals. His best friends were his furry companions, and his love translated to animal shelters and hospitals. Ratan Tata even mandated that his popular Taj hotels would always have their doors open to stray dogs and to give them shelter. From his young days to the very end, Ratan Tata was accompanied by his most loyal friends, and he always kept them on priority. Back in 2018, he was to receive a prestigious Lifetime Achievement Award from the British royal family, but he chose to skip the event because one of his dogs fell sick. That one incident speaks volumes of what his pet dogs meant to Ratan Tata. Tata's vision of a full-fledged animal hospital came to life when the small animal hospital was inaugurated last year, again showcasing his commitment to providing care for creatures who cannot speak for themselves. It was Ratan Tata's kindness to every living being that truly made him so loved and so missed today. Bureau Report, India Today.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
every moment spent with him is a fond memory. I remember once he came home in Mumbai to have breakfast with the family. That was probably a couple of years ago. And we had a simple idli dosa, vada sambar served for breakfast. He was so profuse in his happiness, in his thanks. I mean, he just went raving about a simple breakfast. And just before he was leaving, he actually asked my wife, would you like to have a picture with me? And obviously everybody wanted a picture with him. But it was such a cherished moment, I can't tell you. Sorry. I remember there was a point of time that Chorus, Tata, Jaguar, Land Rover, all these companies were going through severe stress. And every analyst on the street would say that Tatas will be run down by these acquisitions. But Mr. Ratan Tata had the courage of conviction that he had made a good bet, that in the long run, the India story would be incomplete without an international footprint. And I think he withstood his ground. He turned them around. He always took the best of executives. Mr. Chandrasekharan, whom he appointed as the chairman of TCS earlier, and then to look after the entire Tata Group since 2017, has done the Tata Group proud by all of these companies turning around, coming of age. I remember a small story. I was in the US about 3 or 4 years ago, visiting a Tata facility jointly with Cornell, which they had set up for developing the startup and innovation ecosystem. And during the presentation,
हमने भरपूर प्रयास किया कि ये अलायंस हो जाए, पर कांग्रेस को लगा कि जिस सपा ने उनको लोकसभा में 17 सीटें दी, जब कांग्रेस की उत्तर प्रदेश में केवल 2 ही सीटें थी 2022 के चुनाव के बाद, या फिर दिल्ली में जिस आम आदमी पार्टी ने उनको 3 सीटें दी, उनसे गठबंधन करना कांग्रेस को मंजूर नहीं था। तो ये कांग्रेस का अति आत्मविश्वास ही है जिस वजह से जो ये नतीजे हैं, क्योंकि साथ लड़ते तो निश्चित तौर पर कांग्रेस को ही सबसे ज्यादा फायदा होता। हम दिल्ली में अकेले चुनाव लड़ेंगे। एक तरफ अति आत्मविश्वास से भरी कांग्रेस है और दूसरी तरफ अहंकारी भाजपा। हम दिल्ली में अपनी जनता के बीच सर झुकाकर अपने काम जो हमने 10 साल में किए हैं वो बताएंगे, उनके बेसिस पर हम चुनाव लड़ेंगे।
Exactly 258 weeks ago, this post announced the arrival of Ratan Tata on social media. The reclusive conglomerate, very Indian and very global, was a rare gem in the social media, loved and embraced by the youth. He wasn't there in the most common and public social media platforms like Twitter turned X or the Facebook. But it was Instagram that suited Dr. Generian. His young friend and the youngest GM of Tata Group, Shantanu, 1/4 of his age, taught him how to be social in the virtual world. Well, he did take it by storm. In 258 weeks, with 67 posts, most of which had more than 1 million views, he had 10.6 million followers, but followed only 2: Tata Trust and Small Animal Hospital, Mumbai.
It sums up the man himself. He was a very private man who led India's topmost business house to multi-million-dollar profit benchmark. He was handsome, loaded, intelligent, but a bachelor. Yet, never lonely. His body aged, but not his mind. His friends grew old and young became his pals. He was, and always will be, India's Ratan.
Ratan Tata was a Zoroastrian Parsi born and brought up in Bombay in colonial India. He grew up and made his name a brand in independent India's maximum city, Mumbai. Born to Naval Tata, he was blood related to the Tata family but a distant relative. Ratan Tata's father, Naval Tata, was adopted by the youngest son of legendary founder of Tata Group, Jamsetji Tata. This adoption of 1908 changed everything. Ratan Tata's father, adopted son of R.J. Tata, worked his way up from the lowest rank to become deputy